A perfect example of introverted thinking versus extroverted thinking, I think, is a story about Einstein. A book came out entitled "100 Authors Against Einstein." To this, Einstein himself responded, "If I were wrong, then one would have been enough." The book represents the argument of extroverted thinking. You are wrong because I have a greater quantity of force behind me. In other words, I have more external presence. I am more able to make myself felt in the external world. But Einstein represents the introverted thinking counterargument. Your external presence only matters if it has some kind of internal validity. If you can show a logical inconsistency in my reasoning, then you win. You don't need anything else. But if my reasoning is perfectly sound, then it does not matter how many arguments you make. I'll still be right. I'll be internally valid, even if I'm not externally present. An argument cannot be more or less valid. It can only be valid or invalid. It is a qualitative distinction, not a quantitative one. Mike Stacklasa, who I believe is another introverted thinking type, has summed up this difference when talking about the portrayal of Yoda in Attack of the Clones.
But, despite all his wisdom and knowledge, Yoda eventually has to take out a tiny baby-sized lightsaber and fight a guy 3 times as tall as he is who has a much bigger lightsaber. My problem with this is that Yoda has a handicap based on his physical limitations, when his character should be above that sort of thing. Yes, I know they both tried to do more advanced things first, like throw rocks at each other, but even in other instances, Yoda has to make up for his size when using a lightsaber. One time he throws a lightsaber at a dude because he can't reach him. And he's got to jump all the time. It must be tiring.
Size matters not.
Oh, I'm sorry, Yoda, it does. It does if you use a lightsaber. All your wise sayings have been ruined in the prequels. I'm so sorry. So in this scene, he flips around the cave and bounces off the walls because he's so small that he can't reach Dooku. My question is, if Yoda can do this, and they're basically pretty well matched as far as their use of the Force goes, then why wasn't Dooku also flipping off the ceiling too? Or what if Dooku just happened to be a 19-foot-tall Gorgon with the 12-foot-long lightsaber? Yoda would get squished like a bug. My point is, if you can match your opponent's skills with the Force, you'd then better also be physically strong too. And this goes against everything that the Force is about. You see, Yoda was so magical and interesting because you didn't expect this little tiny creature to be a Jedi Master.
Jedi Master?
We all had a preconception that a great warrior would be someone physically strong and intimidating.
I'm looking for a great warrior.
By making Yoda a little guy, they were illustrating that the Force is something beyond the physical. But by showing Yoda fight with the lightsaber, it ruins all that because it takes that concept and those rules and throws it in the dumpster, right next to Bambi.
IDR Labs was the first to point out that FETI as an axis is distinctly non-material and non-physical, as compared with TEFI. TE, extroverted thinking, is concerned with external presence and accomplishment. To put it rather cynically, extroverted thinking often thinks in terms of might makes right because right makes might. But introverted thinking rather dislikes this and argues that right makes right regardless of might. I'm very proud of my little sayings there. On the other hand, just as a side note, extroverted feeling tends to think that properly polite makes right, since one is now following the right internal protocol. But introverted feeling detests such external protocols and says essentially the same thing as introverted thinking. Right feeling makes right even if impolite. I'll escort myself out the room now. In my church responsibilities, I work with 2 people I believe are ESFJ and ESTJ respectively. On one issue, the ESTJ insisted that if such and such a group is not using the gym as much as we do, then we should get priority for it, not them. But the ESFJ countered, no, it doesn't matter how much they actually use it. What matters is that, according to the rules established, they always have first dibs on the gym. The ESFJ was thus more concerned about the proper rules, FETI, that is, the proper rules outside of what's going on right now in the here and now. And he's all about giving up of himself and also of dissociating himself from the current opportunity in order to comply with those rules for the benefit of everyone at all times. But the ESTJ was concerned with the current actuality and optimizing performance in accord with that. We need to use the gym more often, so we should win the rights to the gym. So, with all that established, how does Yoda fall here? I think it should be now clear that Yoda, at least as he was portrayed in The Empire Strikes Back, is a thoroughly introverted thinking philosopher.
Master, moving stones around is one thing. This is totally different.
No, no different. Only different in your mind. You must unlearn what you have learned.
All right, I'll give it a try.
No, try not. Do. Or do not. There is no try.
I can't. It's too big.
Size matters not. Look at me. Judge me by my size, do you? And where you should not. For my ally is the Force. And a powerful ally it is. Life creates it. Makes it grow. Its energy surrounds us. And binds us. Luminous beings are we, not this crude matter. You must feel the Force around you. Here, between you, me, the tree, the rock, everywhere. Yes, even between the land and the ship.
As Archimedes said, "Give me a lever long enough and I could lift the earth." Crap, I should probably check to make sure that Archimedes actually said that. Just a second. Archimedes quote. Let me see. Wiki quote will be fine. Lever. As Archimedes said, "Give me a lever long enough and I could lift the earth." Or something along those lines. The question for Archimedes is not, could I ever find a lever long enough, but simply, if I could find a lever long enough, would I be able to do it? See, he's illustrating a principle. He is not proposing an actual action. It is the same deal here with Yoda. Yoda is saying that the Force is like a universal lever, that if you know what you're doing, you can lift anything. It is something which transcends physical limitations, quantitative limitations, crude matter. Furthermore, the Force is conceived as a unifier. Thus we see the shadow of Fe in Ti. The Ti introverted thinking principle, the Ti framework, serves to unite everything onto the same even playing field. Everything is reducible to variables in the grand universal equation. The objects are not as real as the framework, the rational framework wherein they lie.
But beware of the dark side. Anger, fear, aggression. The dark side of the Force are they. Easily they flow, quick to join you in a fight. If once you start down the dark path, forever will it dominate your destiny. Consume you it will, as it did Obi-Wan's apprentice.
Vader. Is the dark side stronger?
No, no, no. Quicker, easier, more seductive. A Jedi uses the Force for knowledge and defense. Never for attack.
The dark side is here characterized, I think, as a rather extroverted thinking and also extroverted sensation sort of thing. It is associated with immediate emotions, with instant exercise of power, with being seduced by external presences which overwhelm one's internal principles. It's said to be faster, to be sure, but they are said to not last because they are of poor quality in the end. And to Luke's question, if the dark side is technically stronger than the light, Yoda quite vehemently and you could say even emotionally says no. Extroverted thinking is not stronger than TI. It is simply faster. It's focused only on accomplishing one's own goals. It's unthinking, it's too emotional, and it's too undisciplined. It's too partial. Too much about the perfected exercise of one's individual will instead of the melting of the individual will into the universal laws of the Force. Also, his final warning is interesting here, that the Force is not for attack, but for defense and knowledge. This, I think, is a very, very introverted thinking sentiment. You should not focus on external presence, but on gaining pure internal knowledge and understanding. You don't engage the external world, you just wait for it to work itself out. The principles will be victorious in the end. Thus, we could say that Keynesian economics is the dark side of the Force, while Milton Friedman is the Yoda of economics. As far as personality types is concerned, if Yoda, as a character, was meant to represent FE over TI, as would be the case with any FJ type, an INFJ or ISFJ or ESFJ or ENFJ, we should expect him, I would think, to be more externally kind, accommodating, or sympathetic in some way or other, more likely to use a spoonful of sugar to help the medicine of truth go down. But none of these things seem to be a part of the wisdom and charm of Yoda. As a teacher, he is hard and forthright. Upon first meeting Luke, he actively seeks to irritate him as part of his test. You see, he's not seeking to get that common ground with Luke through sympathy. He doesn't care. Yoda just cares about the principle and seeing what the other person's internal principles are made of. Later, he upbraids Luke straightway for his immaturity, and in general, he makes no attempt to blunt the hard truths that Luke must face.
I am ready. Ben, I can be a Jedi. Ben, tell him I'm ready.
Ready, are you? What knows you ready? For 800 years have I trained Jedi. My own counsel will I keep on who is to be trained. The Jedi must have the deepest commitment, the most serious mind. This one, a long time have I watched. All his life as he looked away to the future, to the horizon, never his mind on where he was, what he was doing. Adventure, excitement. A Jedi craves not these things. You are reckless.
I won't fail you. I'm not afraid.
You will be. You will be.
It is interesting to contrast this with the teaching style of Obi-Wan Kenobi, who I think was much kinder, gentler, and indirect with Luke, and even with the skeptic Han Solo. Simply put, Yoda is frank. Frank Oz! I'm already at the door. Symptoms of SENI generally include singularity, conciseness, and focus, as well as assertiveness to the pronouncements that one considers most important. When SE is more dominant, one should expect some form of earthiness or grounding in the person, a matter-of-factness and a directness. Some indications of this have already been mentioned for Yoda. Yoda is forthright and matter-of-fact, to be sure. He also does upbraid Luke specifically for not focusing on what he was doing in the moment, for being too carried away in dreams of the future, also for being too easily dazzled by unrealistic possibilities of adventure and excitement, and for not having enough focus and internal discipline. In many ways, I think Yoda is upbraiding Luke for his extroverted intuition, or at least what Yoda perceives to be that in Luke. This is a fascinating counterbalance to Yoda's introverted thinking, which is naturally abstract. There is a peculiar unity in Yoda between the abstractions and logic of introverted thinking and the immediate surroundings highlighted by extroverted sensation. This is something especially peculiar to the ISTP, whose talent is in converting abstract rules into real immediate practice, hence why in the past I've referred to them as masters. Yoda's teaching style is, for the most part, very down to earth. He puts Luke through very physical exercises and ordeals. He does not speak for very long, is concise, never waxing loquacious. He is to the point and says what he means. Furthermore, he often teaches by physical demonstration. When Luke's ship sinks into the bog, he has Luke try to move it first, and when that fails, he demonstrates it himself. He has Luke enter the dark cave, too, telling him little to nothing beforehand save a few cryptic poetic statements. If Yoda were an INTP, for instance, I think we would expect his auxiliary extroverted intuition, his NE, to be less concerned with focus and actually much more concerned with open-mindedness, less direct, more comprehensive, more likely to use words than actions. Furthermore, we would expect an INTP Yoda not to be so aphoristic in his wisdom, but to be more talkative about what luminous beings actually are, how they compare with crude matter, why are luminous beings not crude matter, what implications this has for philosophy generally, etc. Yoda doesn't do any of this. He expresses SENI, I would think. He asserts his vision. He asserts what he sees in his mind, and in the ISTP's case can get irritated by people who want to endlessly pontificate on what was just a perfectly good little self-contained prophecy that's more about you just seeing it. Okay, anyway, that's all I've got for Yoda. See you another time. 2 weeks maybe? I don't know.
I don't believe it.
That is why you fail.